Hey everyone, welcome back. Bigelow Reviews here. I am Brent Bigelow, and I have multiple reviews for you. And this month's catch-up video, it's a pun, I tried. But I've been gone for like about 8 weeks and I haven't posted anything, so I thought I'd come back on here, catch you guys up with some things when it comes to music reviews and what music I've been listening to, my thoughts on albums that are out within the last month or so. We're going to jump into it and just start talking some albums. First album we have on the list to talk about is 070 Shake's second studio album, You Can't Kill Me, which is the follow-up to her 2020 record, Modus Vivendi, if I said that right. But her music is very much inspired by like 80s electronic music, and I really loved her debut album a lot. The whole thing's a vibe all the way through, really easy to play it and just roll with it. But like on that first album, there really wasn't any songs that really stood out. There was like a couple tracks on there that really kind of became some hits, but nothing that really really shook the landscape of music. And then the same thing can be said about this project. It's a pretty okay listen all the way through, but there's no songs that really pop off the charts and really like wow you. The whole album kind of has this haunting and super scary vibe to it, which kind of goes towards her vibe and her artistic agenda. Man, I am so sweating. One of the songs on here, you have Body with Christine and the Queens, which is the feature artist on here. Has her talking about how she's obsessed with this girl's body and doesn't actually love her, but she loves her body and is just entranced and just is all consumed by her. She just forgets the soul inside of that person that loves the capsule of her soul. One of my favorite songs on here is a track called History, which is a passionate confession of love in a 3-part saga of sorts, which ends in this pretty fantastic FKA Twigs like rap session. Another song in here I enjoy a lot is C'est Flou Le Loup. Hopefully I said that correct. It's the final track of the entire album, and it's just a love-filled, heartbreaking track about self-reflection and how she sees herself. And it's just a great way to end the whole album. But if I had to describe this whole thing, it's like a Frank Ocean, 808 and Heartbreaks, FKA, Kanye, West vibe of an album, but nowhere close as good as the debut record is. But I give this one about a 63. Jeez. Next album on the list, we have Foals' 9th studio album entitled Life Is Yours. And easily, out of their entire discography, like I said, of 9 albums, this is their most synth-heavy and 80s like disco influence album out of everything they've ever released. Has this like Gorillaz plastic beach type vibe to it. My favorite album by Foals is Everything Not Saved Will Be Lost Part 1, released in 2019. Has this super dark, heavy, just brooding bass rock indie alt thing going on that I really like. But for this one, they were heavily influenced by having great times pre-COVID and lockdown. So when this album was released, when the people were released, this had like it was a time to go party it up in the clubs and have fun type record. The only issue I kind of have with this album when it comes to most Foals records, I kind of get stuck in that same spot and same pocket for an entire album, entire project, and they kind of use the same sounds over and over again. You're listening to it, it doesn't sound that much of a diverse project. But the 80s synth dance thing actually really works a lot in their favor on this project though. It's a great chillin' on the beach record with a Long Island iced tea, just dancing your pain away and dancing away all the isolation that you had during COVID, and a rather decent record. My 3 favorite songs on this thing, you have Life Is Yours, the title track, 2001, and Looking High. Those are some of my favorite tracks. But like I said, the lack of interesting and different type of production choices on here makes it kind of an easily forgettable record, but still a really nice thing to throw on just to listen to, and it's rather ear-pleasing. But I give Foals' latest album, Life Is Yours, a score of like a 70. Oh, here we go. This record here is trash. This is Drake's latest record. Honestly, never mind. Which kind of feels like the whole vibe of this record. It feels like Kanye started making this thing 5 minutes before his essay was due that night. It's half done. It's too damn long. The vibe and the idea is so close. If you would have cared a little bit more, this album I think could have been way better than what it was. But there's some really awful like production choices on this thing. Terrible production choices on this thing. And a great example of that is the squeaky boot slash bed rocking sex noise that's happening on the song Currents. It's not good. It sounds like SpongeBob's squeaky boots. Yeah, this album's not very good. Texaco Green is a pretty decent song that I kind of enjoy. But obviously the best song on here is Jimmy Cooks featuring 21 Savage. But the reason it's not even that great of a song is it comes out of nowhere on this project. It's at the very end of the album. It's just out of place compared to the rest of the vibe of the end of the album, which has this like EDM nightclub dancing like R&B thing that Drake's kind of been doing lately, but this is just not a good example of it. This album is trash, and I give it a score of 10. Next album we have on here is Kingdom Book 1 by Maverick City and Kirk Franklin. Last year I failed to mention how great of an album Maverick City released with the Basement Tapes in 2021. Honestly, that should have been on my top 20 list video. At least an honorable mention, if not somewhere on the list, because that album is fantastic. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, really great gospel music if that's something that you're into. But when it comes to this album, Maverick City is already on a tear of just making some great gospel music. And on this time, they also added Kirk Franklin, who is like a legendary gospel guy from like the 2000s. It's really nice to have him on this album, especially since this album is not just a studio album, this is a live recorded album, which they recorded at the Everglades Correctional Institution in Miami, Florida. So it is filmed on location in a jail cell with inmates acting as like the crowd / choir into the background. It's just a beautiful record and just great music. But my one issue that goes through the entire project with this album is that the vocals on here just sound robotic and just like underproduced. They just don't sound as great and as gorgeous of singers as they really should. They feel sometimes almost buried in the background where the choir is almost overpowering them, or there's moments where, like I said, their vocals just don't sound recorded up to snuff with even like the instrumentation in. But other than that, when it comes to the recordings, everything else sounds crisp and beautiful and you feel like a fly on the wall. Naomi, Chandler, and Kirk kill it on this project. Their vocal performances are outstanding. Some of my favorite tracks on here, Melodies from Heaven is a great track. Just stunning. The choirs, the way everybody vocally sings together as a group is just so good. The back and forth that happen like towards the tail end of the song are just super great. One song that I had some beef with until like you really start to listen to it a little bit more is the song Bless Me, which has this really hokey pokey Mickey Mouse sounding intro where it's like it's just so rigid. We're a band that's so soulful and just like it just oozes that style of music, and they do this like whole like marching band snare and it just sounds rigid as heck. Once the song kicks in and they actually full-blown start doing their thing, it's a beautiful song and it's just a full-blown rockin' track that just makes you want to stand up and just do something active. Another track on here that's just a classic gospel track, which had to come from Kirk Franklin's influence, is the song My Life Is In Your Hands. It's a multi-phase track where it just sounds like you should be singing this song in a pew in some church down in the South. It's just fantastic. I could keep going about this album, but I'm not going to. But this album's an easy 90, but I'm gonna give it a 92, but it's so good. Next one on here is Give or Take by Giveon, which is his second or first studio album. I don't know how to look at his albums because it's all so convoluted to me, but according to me, I would say this is his second album, but if you ask Wikipedia, it's his first album. I don't know, man, it's really confusing. Giveon has his natural, just beautiful voice, and it's just so odd for an R&B singer that he has such an impact on the game. His last couple EPs / albums, whatever the hell you want to call them, are just killers on the charts, making him a crap ton of money, and it's no difference with this one. The themes on this album are just obsessive love that completely consumes the listener, and then the other side of that is just absolute heartbreak and devastation and just tears of sadness coming from him. Some of my favorite tracks on here, we have Let Me Go, This Will Do, Trying to Be. Some of my favorite songs on here. There's a few songs on here that are rather lacking. A good example of that is For Tonight. Just kind of sound like a run-of-the-mill basic R&B track. He could totally do better. It was just fine. It was okay. But nothing really bad about this project other than, like I said, a few songs are just kind of lacking. But I give this album a score of a 78. Next album on here we have Drill Music in Zion by Lupe Fiasco. I didn't realize Lupe Fiasco was still making music, but apparently he has an extensive discography since 2011, where he released Lasers, and that to me was like a big album. I remember that album being a huge hit, and now with this project he's having like a huge resurgence in his career. But like I said, this is Lupe Fiasco's 8th studio album, and he's been on a tear of recently that I didn't even know about. But on this album he's rapping about the issues in his hometown of Chicago, which we all know with all the gun violence and everything, and he kind of caters this issue to the drill music scene and that rap lifestyle to being one of the major issues for his hometown. But his just sheer penmanship on this thing is incredible. It's a really awesome and fantastic rap album that's rather short, with like less than 40 minutes. It gets his points across very well, and just some of his like lyrical aerobics on here on the track like Gaudy are just incredible. If you just really focus on the lyrics, it's just wild, the rap patterns and rhyme schemes that he's doing on this. The knowledgeable points he's making on this album are fantastic, and I'm not even going to take my time to explain everything. I just rather you go listen to yourself. The points he's making are incredible and just really poignant to such a serious issue as like gun violence and everything through America is becoming a rather big issue. Yeah, some of my favorite songs on here, you have Gaudy, Miss Murals, and then Naomi, some of my favorite songs on this album. But yeah, Drill Music in Zion by Lupe Fiasco, I give a score of an 87. Please check it out. And a few more albums here to go. Next one we have Muna by Muna. This is their 3rd studio album after breaking up with their old record label. Now they've hitched the ride with Phoebe Bridgers on her label, and the band just feels completely empowered and have the freedom to pretty much do anything they want. And you can tell on this project. They stretch their sound out, they expand everything. They're not just this LGBTQ plus power rock band. They have more dynamics, and honestly I wish there's a little bit more to this album than they already are trying to do. But on this album, like I said, they have this whole pop power rock thing going on. They have like an indie folk acoustic type track on here. There's also like an 80s Peter Gabriel style track with a song called Solid, which is one of my favorites. But like I said, they feel free and empowered to do whatever the hell they want to on this thing, and it's awesome. A really big popular song on here was Silk Chiffon, with Phoebe Bridgers on it, which released back in like early 2021, and now just appearing as like the first track to this album, really showing like a brand new beginning for this band. I'm really excited to see what happens next with Muna, especially like I said, they're like have the ability just to do whatever they want to. So hopefully their next project has a little bit more of a diversity and a little bit more of experimentation or something. Just the super poppy tracks are somewhat getting annoying to me. That's just me. And I give this album a 72. Next album on here is Sometimes Forever by Soccer Mommy. I like Soccer Mommy. They're pretty cool. I love them a lot, but this album is not for me. This has the group trying to do something a little bit different, and I don't like it. There's some really weird industrial rock things happening on this album with a track called Unholy Affliction. There's just a really odd industrial sounds happening that I'm not really feeling. The album is kind of feels longer than it really is. But this album has Soccer Mommy stepping out of their box, and I don't want them to. Like stay in your little dream pop and rock box, and don't stay out of it. Don't try to get out of that box, because you do a great job at it, and maybe if you can somehow tweak that sound and make it something different, it might be a little bit more of an enjoyable experience. There's only a couple songs in here I really do enjoy from like the get-go. The track With You is one of my favorites. It has this really fun like psychedelic galactic sounding intro, but then strips it all away just to bring it back again. Is a really odd production choice, but the rest of the album not so much. I give it about a score of a 39. Okay, next one we have Minions: The Rise of Gru. I knew you've been waiting for it. Put on your tuxedos, here comes the review, everybody. With a stacked lineup of just incredible artists out of 2022 and the insane mix of 70s classics on this. How could this album not be fantastic? But somehow in the second half of the album they make it dog shit. I don't know how. I don't know how they did it. The first half is so good with production by Jack Antonoff. Oh, Jack Antonoff. Oh, I love Jack Antonoff. The collection of songs on here are just fantastic. The artists are super great, and like honestly, every track from like track 1 through 10 is like great. The very first song is Turn Up the Sunshine with Diana Ross and freaking Tame Impala. Come on. Yeah, Funky Town by St. Vincent, who totally trips it out to add this extra layer of just techno influence. It just makes it kind of sound like a LSD psychedelic trip. Then you have Brockhampton's kind of playing around with the track Hollywood Swingin', almost making it sound like a P. Diddy sample or a P. Diddy like track from back in the 90s. Freaking Thundercat with Fly Like an Eagle, one of my favorite songs ever. Like the cover of this song with Thundercat, also one of my favorite artists. Super fantastic. Like I mentioned previously, you have Phoebe Bridgers on this one with a song called A Goodbye to Love. It's just an incredible, beautiful cover of a song. And then you even have Bleachers on here covering John Lennon's Insta Karma, which is just another pretty fantastic cover with a great saxophone solo throughout this one too. But the trebles of the second half of the album really just bog it down, man. Realistically, like I would like to give this album an 85 through tracks 1 through 10, but with the addition to the other songs on here, I give it like at least a 69. Next album on here, we have Wasteland by Brent Faiyaz, another great R&B artist out here releasing music in this year. We're still waiting on Frank Ocean. Where the hell are you? Frank? Where are you, Frank? Frank Ocean, where are you? Frank? Anywhere? Frank, hello? But this is Brent's second studio album since 2017. His debut album, Sonder Sun. And then he also dropped an EP in 2020 with Fuck the World, that being that project. All of these are pretty fantastic, just great Brent Faiyaz tracks on here. But one of my biggest issues when it comes to Brent Faiyaz is his overall production and his unregularity of releasing tracks. Guy just kind of goes poof, gone. And every so often you'll sprinkle a couple songs here, sprinkle some more. I just wish there was a little bit more of a regularity of releases. Me stating this kind of affects this album to a very serious point. With Wasteland, there's definitely a lot of wasted time on this project. This album has like a runtime of over an hour with a lot of skits, songs that we've heard over the last couple years, and just a lot of other unnecessary filler tracks to elongate this entire tracks list. Some of the best songs on here are already tracks, like I mentioned, already came out. You have Gravity featuring Tyler, the Creator. And then you have Wasting Time featuring Drake and the Neptunes on production. Both these songs are just incredible. Which leads to one of my major issues with this album, is that the album sucks. Like, to listen to it from beginning to end, it tells this whole story of this relationship, and honestly it could have been it's not a great album. It would have made a better short film, if we're being completely honest. And I would love to see that somehow come to life with Brent Faiyaz probably even featuring in the film and acting in it. The tracks on here, there's only like a few songs that are actually on this album, but they're all pretty great. It's just the extra slog of crap in the middle of it that almost could make this album freaking fantastic, but it made me drop the score a lot. But the songs on here are just wonderful, sexy, toxic as hell, and just straight up seductive. But the full package just isn't what I wanted from a Brent Faiyaz album. But if you get rid of all the extra crap on here, add a couple different new songs, I really think this album could be way better than the score I want to give it, and that's an 80, which is a rather decent score. This album I think really could have been way better than what it was. The last album on here I had to review, I actually wanted to do like its own review of it, but just for the time's sake, I figured I'd throw it on here. You have Cave World by Viagra Boys, which is just a post-punk, garage rock, punk album from a band out of Switzerland, which I think is pretty funny. I don't know, you don't hear too much music, especially punk music from Switzerland. But this is the group's third studio album since 2015 when they debuted, but they're high energy, super sarcastic, witty points about politics and everyone's belief on just the vaccines from COVID and everything is a really enjoyable listen. Every song on this is just an absolute banger. One of the better punk rock albums I listened to this year. Like I said, I like this album a lot. I should have made a review of it by itself, but I think this album's pretty freaking fantastic. But like all great punk music, sticks it to the man, makes some points, pokes fun at the super extreme right people, kind of calling them monkeys. And at the very last song of the album, talking about all those stupid right-wingers can go live in the trees in the jungle, and if you want to live and be uncivilized, go do it there, throw shit at each other. I don't care. Play with their genitals, masturbate, all that stuff. Extremely funny. Viagra Boys, Cave World, freaking hilarious. Great punk album. And I give it a solid score of 90. But what did you think about all of the albums I talked about? Put your scores down in the comment section below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this with your friends. And then I will see you guys on the next one. Hopefully, if time willing. Biggie out.